My name is Brother Jordan Dery. I am the son, actually, of one of your teachers there at JP2. As you can see, I am not a normal 17-year-old. I am what's called a brother. So I'm a seminarian. I'm studying to become a priest one day. And so I'm just going to tell you the story of how I got here. My vocation is pretty special. It's different from a lot of people in the sense that I started when I was very young. I was only 11 years old actually when God called me. Because I was part of a club, me and my older brother Marcus. It's called Conquest, and it was run by this congregation called the Legionaries of Christ. And the priest who ran that club, his name was Father Timothy Moran, invited my dad one time to be a chaperone for a retreat up at a school in New Hampshire. And so my dad figured, well, if I'm going to go help with this retreat, I might as well bring my two sons, right? I was only 10 years old, and I was from Jacksonville, Florida at the time. It's up in northeastern Florida. I have an older brother, as I said before, Marcus, an older sister, Caitlin, and Hope and Will. And so Mark and I were off. Not our first time seeing snow, but it wasn't a very common occurrence, so we were all excited. We didn't really know what to expect. We just knew it was some sort of a school, there was going to be a retreat, Father Timothy was going to be there, and some of our friends went as well. And so, to make it brief, it was one of the best weekends of our lives. It was a blast. And just in general, we got to really be with these boys. And who these boys were, these are boys from 7th grade to 12th grade who actually have left their homes and are living in, many of them, in a different state in New Hampshire, and are trying to discern whether or not God is calling them to be a priest. Which is amazing, because some people would say, well, they're too young to know. But God calls when God calls. Because as time went by, next thing you know, my older brother told me that he was going to go for a month to this school. And that was, I say it that bluntly, because that's really the way it was for me. I didn't really know about his whole discernment process. I didn't know that he'd been thinking about it for a while. I didn't know he told my parents, and all of a sudden, my brother, who, we've been living in the same room my whole life, we had the bunk beds, the whole shebang, we did everything together, mostly. All of a sudden he was gone. He was going to go for a whole month to this school. So that was the first big surprise, Mark is gone. But of course, over time, you can get used to anything. And the next few months went by very well. I was part of a bunch of clubs. I did part of a speech club, a drama club. I played a lot of sports, played football, basketball, soccer, tennis, not at the same time, and so life was normal. No change. Until the Christmas of that year, 2010, my family decided to drive all the way up from Jacksonville, Florida, up the coast to New Hampshire to visit my brother. But the most important moment of that whole week there with Mark came on Christmas Eve. Again, this is Christmas Eve 2010, and it was during Mass. I remember I was sitting in the back of the chapel in the school there, in Immaculate Conception Apostolic School, and it was during the homily. And I remember just looking at the rows of these, they're called apostolics and precandidates, okay? These are the boys that are studying there. And I remember just looking out and seeing these apostolics and precandidates wearing their red sweaters and their blue sweaters, and I can't tell you why, other than it was the Holy Spirit, because there really was no other reason. But all of a sudden, just looking at them, I was struck with a very strong desire to be one of them. And I know this is from God, because before this I had never considered something like that. And that was the beginning. That was what I call the seed of my vocation. And then on top of that, not only a little while later, I received a bunch of letters from different classmates of Mark, and they all were inviting me to come to summer camp, and I just felt wanted, and that's a beautiful thing. And so that kind of again pushed me further to do something about this. I finally did something a little bit later when we were sitting at the dinner table having a conversation, and we were talking about Mark. And at some point in the conversation, I don't exactly remember when, my dad said, And looking back, I think it was half jokingly, but he said, "Yeah, we won't let Jordan enter till he's 18." And I heard that, and I didn't remember what I thought, honestly, but all I know is that after that conversation, I went up to my mom, and I asked her, "So Mom, was Dad serious when he said I wouldn't enter until I was 18? My mom just kind of looked at me funny and said, "I don't know. Why?" And so I told her, "Well, to be honest with you, I've been kind of considering going to the school there." And so my mom was kind of taken aback, and she didn't say too much, but she said, "Okay, but there's one condition. If you want to come to the summer program, to that month visit, you have to tell your dad." I'm not going to want to tell him. But it's kind of a big thing, to leave home when you're 11 years old. A little 6th grader or coming up 7th grader, that's a big thing to ask of your dad. But I did eventually work up the courage, which really goes to me to show that this was from God, because He gave me the courage to do something like that. It was after a tennis practice. My dad and I had been hitting around a little bit. We got back into the car on our way home. And after a little pause in the conversation, I decided to say it. I said, "Dad, can I tell you something?" "Sure." "I want you to please pray for me. I'm considering coming to the school, and so please just pray for me." I recently talked to him about the conversation, because I never really knew from his perspective. And I was really moved, because he told me that he just was really not expecting to have that conversation that early. He was expecting maybe a few years down the road. He thought he'd have a few more years with his little son. I always used to work projects with him, so he was excited to maybe rebuild a car engine or just do a lot of manly father-son stuff. So he wasn't expecting me to ask a question like that, that young. But he just told me simply, "I'll pray for you," and that was it. But later on that year, there was a program, or a Mother's Day retreat, where all families were invited to come visit their sons at this school. And so all my parents, my whole family wasn't able to go, but my parents flew up to New Hampshire from Florida, and it was there that they really discovered what an incredible place Immaculate Conception Apostolic School was. This school for boys studying to become priests. They decided to give me permission. So they came home and they brought back the application form. And so the time finally came when, on July 21st, 2011, when my older brother and I flew off, alone, all the way from Jacksonville, New Hampshire. And that began the next period of my life, the period in the apostolic school. And so, in the beginning, it's called the summer program. It's a month where boys are able to come to the school and discern whether or not they felt that God was calling them to this school. And for me, since from the very beginning, I felt very much at home. I was a pretty shy guy, to be honest with you, but it took nothing at all to get me to come out of myself. The first day, just being surrounded by these boys who were very similar to me, who wanted the same things I wanted, who were just great people, I felt immediately part of the brotherhood. And that's really what it was, a brotherhood. And so it took very little to get me out of myself, and I loved it. And I put everything I had into it, and I had a wonderful summer. It was great. It was great just, speaking of fun, I was able to go tubing, I was able to go canoeing. We played sports twice a day. Sometimes they had these massive forts in the back of the school, which they had built many years ago out of railroad ties, and just incredible forts on a hill. We used to play what they called sockball wars with these little balls made out of socks we throw at each other, and just a great summer. Dodgeball and all that fun stuff. And then of course there's the whole spiritual side of things, which I was getting. I was able to go to Mass every day, pray my meditation every morning. I had night prayers, Angelus, Rosary every day, and I was able to live this spiritual life, which was extremely helpful for a boy starting at a very young age. And so, at the end of the month, it was a very easy decision for me. I decided I wanted to enter this school. So there I was, a 12-year-old in a seminary. Even though it was hard at first to leave my family, there was something greater there, which may sound strange and shocking, but it's true, because this is what God wanted from me. And so since I followed God's will, I was happy, totally happy. Couldn't have wanted anything more. Finally, at the end of senior year, I came to the decision point, because after going through the whole program here at the school for the past 5 years of my life, it was time for me to decide whether or not I wanted to go home, continue with college or something along those lines, or if I wanted to enter the seminary. And of course, over the past 5 years, I had been discerning. I was in a school where people are discerning, so I had been discerning if I want to be a priest or not. But there was one moment that I remember which was very powerful in this whole decision process, and that was actually on Holy Thursday of 2016. And at this time, we seniors at Indiana had come all the way up here to Connecticut to do a test your call retreat. And on Holy Thursday of 2016, we received a talk from a very, very holy priest named Father John Curran, and he was just talking about the gift of the priesthood. Because Holy Thursday is actually the day of the priest, because it's the day that Christ established the priesthood at the Last Supper. And so Father John Curran was talking in a very deep way, from very personal experience, about the gift of the priesthood. And after hearing that talk and sitting in the chapel, I remember just walking around the property and just being convinced, once again, being kind of re-established that this is what I want. Some people are called when they're 30 years old. There are seminarians here with me who are only a year above me in formation, but who are 7 years older than me. But there are also some people that God calls when they're very, very young. And it hit me, once again, that moment, that I was one of those. That I was one of those people that God wanted to take out from the world, very young, and kind of just keep him for himself. So I recognized at that moment that God set me aside so that I could become totally his in the Legion. And just to feel that calling, just to feel how you belong to God, just to feel how loved you are by him, and the mission he's calling you to is a very powerful experience. And on September 15th of 2016, I received the Legionary cassock, the one I'm wearing right now, with collar and the sash and the cassock itself. And I became officially a novice, a first-year novice in the Legion of Christ. And what an amazing day that was. After having finished 8 days of spiritual exercises and coming to that moment of receiving the Legionary cassock, then going to Mary, which is the first thing you do after you receive your cassock, and offering your whole vocation to your mother in heaven. Powerful. Powerful.
Okay. Brother Jordan, first day wearing that cassock.
Thoughts going through my head right now. There's one sentence. Chancellor Edward told us a few months ago, some men are called to give their lives for others. And I know today, as I put on this cassock and I see the life I'm giving back to God, that's all I'm thinking is how God has called me to give my life for other people, and what joy that's going to bring, and what joy it is to have so many other brothers with me. It's a real blessing. God has blessed me abundantly, excessively, and I'm very, very thankful for this day.
Great. Well, congratulations, and we're praying for you too, Brother Jordan. Okay.
Of course, I'm still surrounded by brothers all the time, so I still live a very, very brotherly communal life, which is a great grace, something that's always been very impactful in my life. But I live a very simple life. And what that allows me to do is to go deeper into my vocation, into who I am, just as a man, just as a person who's called by God, and to really discover God in my life. And that has been my experience. Just so many profound moments of seeing God. So be open, know that God can call at a young age, and know that if you do follow God's call for your life, whether it be the priesthood, whether it be entering religious life as a brother or as a nun, whether it be being single, whether it be being married, whatever it is, if it is God's will, you will be completely happy. And that's my message for all of you. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all. Be sure that I'll be praying in a very special way for all of you at JP2. Please as well pray for me. My name again is Brother Jordan Dery. And be nice, hope, and will, alright? Treat my mom well. God bless you all.